Welcome back to Narrative Nook Cafe. I'm glad you're here with me today. Grab your drink, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story. My name is Saint. I live in this house. Technically, Grace lives in this house, but everyone knew better than to argue with me about territory. She was hired a few years back as a live-in caretaker and estate assistant. Before I get into everything, let's clear the air. In case you didn't know, I am an orange tabby. I know what people say about orange tabbies. We're weird. Sometimes snobbish, but I don't pay attention to all of that. None of that describes me. I am a saint. It's kind of in the name. Anyway, I am the only person who can tell you the truth about what happened. You see, we cats have a knack for being in places undetected and noticing things we probably shouldn't. It is a true work of art the way we are designed. Anyway, let's get on with the story. Grace was my person, and what a lovely person she was. She walked softly, spoke kindly, and apologized even when she hadn't done anything wrong. Humans like that don't last long in houses like this, you know, among the loud barbarians. I really don't want to tell you their names as they don't deserve names, but in order for you to get a better understanding of how many evil people played a part in this awful plot against my Grace, I will quickly run down the names of all the nitwits involved. Joe is the chef. He is not the worst of the humans, but his silence during the whole ordeal certainly has made me wash my paws of him. Ashley, the house manager. She's just a maid who tells the other maid, Clara, what to do. Ashley is mean, bossy, and worst of all, lazy. She spends her days telling Clara that she's not doing a good job, all the while she's in and out of Mr. Bedford's bedroom. What an awful woman. Clara is sweet and gentle like my Grace, but she doesn't have a backbone, so she is easily influenced to go along with whatever is happening. Lastly, we have Stephen, the butler. I would say that he is the ringleader, but I think he's tied with Ashley on the list of the worst humans to ever exist. I knew the others before she did. Their smiles were too careful. Their voices changed when she entered the room. Their footsteps never hesitated, except near her door. Grace thought I was dramatic because I would hiss and gag when they came close to me. She was right, I am dramatic. But I'm also rarely wrong. The day everything changed, the house smelled different. But not of the usual stench of the stuff that they put on in the morning. It's a daily failure on their part, if you ask me. No, the house smelled of fear pretending to be calm. Like plans whispered the night before. People think kitchens are honest places. They're wrong. It is a place where deception is often acceptable. Why do you think people keep their recipes a secret? It is also a very loud place. This is where hands stay busy, so mouths don't have to be. Everyone was there, sitting, standing, pretending to be doing something and making a lot of noise. It was so loud. Sorry, cats have sensitive hearing, but henceforth I will try to keep the complaints to a minimum. Anyway, it wasn't calm and it smelled like fear. My Grace stood by the counter, holding herself the way she did when she didn't want to take up space. She asked a simple question, a polite one. She was always polite, the kind that shouldn't change the temperature of a room. Has anyone touched my mail? I watched shoulders stiffen, watched eyes roll and faces frown, preparing to attack. Grace noticed too. She always did. I jumped onto the counter. They didn't like when I would do that, but I don't like them, so we were even. If they were going to attack Grace with lies, I need to be on the front line to defend her. Why would anyone touch your mail? Joe asked. Did you leave it out where someone can touch it? If you were a little neater, you would not have to search for things, or accuse people of things they didn't do. Seriously, Grace, you are a child. Grace felt embarrassed. She didn't not expect all of this to come from one harmless question. She immediately regretted that she even asked. Grace tried to smooth things over. She always did. Soft voice, small smile, carrying the weight so no one else had to. Humans call that kindness. I call it dangerous. Silly me. I must have put the mail away in my room. I'll go check after breakfast, Grace said. Someone said she had become forgetful lately and that she worried too much. That's what people say when they want you quiet and to second-guess yourself. Grace didn't argue. She just nodded, like the problem belonged to her alone. The problem was that it never did. Grace's phone lit up. Just once. Enough to change her breathing. She hid it quickly, but I saw. I always see. It was a number that wasn't saved, which is strange because she always saved numbers with little pictures. She reached down and touched my head like she needed grounding. I leaned into her hand. She smelled like soap and something heavier. Like there's something she hadn't told me yet. She decided to step outside. Fresh air, she thought. Space. She didn't know the house was already closing in. The door opened. Then it closed. That's when I noticed that the room relaxed. I knew at that moment something was wrong. Rooms shouldn't relax when your best person leaves them. I heard someone say she'd been acting strange. Another voice dismissed it because they thought Grace was too close to say what they really wanted to say. A third wrapped it up neatly, like that was the end of the conversation. It wasn't. I followed the sound of Grace's footsteps. Of course I did. She was my person. Outside was quieter. Not peaceful, just quieter. There's a difference. The quiet was music to my ears, but it was also unsettling. Grace stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind her, like she didn't want to draw attention, but also didn't want to be followed. I slipped out after her. I always do. She pretends not to notice. She always notices, but we love each other, so she didn't mind. I meant, why would she when she watches me go to the litter box? There are very little boundaries in our relationship. The air was cool, damp, heavy with the kind of silence that listens back. Grace wrapped her arms around herself and stared into the yard like it might answer her. It didn't. She checked her phone again. This time she frowned. The little crease between her eyebrows showed up, the one that means she's trying to convince herself she's imagining things. Humans love doing that. She paced. That's not fresh air behavior. That's waiting. I circled her legs and sat. If something was coming, I wanted to see it first. Grace whispered something I couldn't hear. Her voice shook anyway. Then she looked at the house. Not like it was no longer our home, like it was watching her and holding her captive. She took a step back toward the door, hesitated. Her hand hovered near the handle, unsure which side was safer. I stood beside her ready to tackle whatever was to come, or run away, whichever is smarter. When Grace moved, I moved. Loyalty isn't complicated, it's instinct. From inside the house, a voice called her name. Sweet, casual, practiced. It was Mr. Bedford. He was only 56 years old, but her depended on Grace to take care of him. This time he called her because he needed his morning coffee and medications. Grace answered it. Of course she did. She always answers. Off to do her daily tasks as if she wasn't waiting on this strange number that made her nervous to call again. Grace lived in that house for 6 years. She'd worked there long enough to know which floorboards complained, which doors stuck, which smiles meant nothing. She learned routines, learned people, learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. She thought that meant she was safe. I knew better, so I was always by her side to keep watch. Grace had a routine. She wakes early, always has. She feeds me before she feeds herself, apologizes if my bowl isn't full enough. She makes coffee she barely drinks and stares out the window like she's waiting for permission to exist. Grace worked in quiet ways. The kind of quiet ways people forget to thank you for because they stop noticing the work is being done at all. She organized papers no one wanted to read, answered calls no one wanted to take, handled problems so smoothly they never looked like problems. That's why they kept her. And that's why they didn't worry when she said something wasn't right. To them, she was easy to ignore or manipulate if it comes down to it. She spent the morning on the phone. Calm voice, careful words, writing things down the way she always did, neatly, like order might protect her. I sat on the back of the couch and watched her listen. Listening is dangerous work. They were discussing Mr. Bedford's accounts. He had a business partner, Mr. Warren, that's been snooping around lately. He hardly ever comes over unless it is to discuss business. However, lately he's been coming over to see Grace. It seems to be coordinated because he waits until Mr. Bedford is either not home or taking a nap, which he does often these days. I think it's the medication. I heard he say his name, so I can only assume that's who she is talking to. She seems to be listening intently. She was shuffled through documents, then she paused, stared at a number on a page, read it again, slowly as if she was in disbelief, like she won the lottery or figured something out. Her breathing changed. Grace didn't panic. She never does. She does that thing where she gathers facts first and feelings later. Humans call it maturity. I call it giving everyone else a head start. It's insanity. She walked upstairs and opened a door she usually avoided. One of the rooms no one likes acknowledged. It was the kind of room where you can hide evidence. She stood there longer than necessary. Then she closed it, carefully hoping no one had seen. At noon, the butler asked her to run an errand, a small favor. Said it like it wasn't a test. He asked if she could go purchase a specific furniture polish. She never took care of things like that, so I knew there was something wrong with this situation. Nevertheless, Grace agreed. When Grace returned, she saw Tyler, Mr. Bradford's son, in the driveway talking to a stranger. Tyler rarely came around. He is the typical privileged brat who thinks he can do what he wants when he wants, and if you ever told him no or held him accountable, then you are a lifelong enemy. I never liked him, but again, he wasn't around enough for me to care about him. When Grace got out of the car, she spoke, and this prompted the stranger to strike up a conversation. He spoke to her like they already knew her, not her name, her routine. He commented on the cat hair on her sweater, on the way she walked, on the fact that she always took the long way back from town. Grace laughed nervously. I didn't like the way the air shifted around them. Didn't like how they stood close but not threatening. Didn't like how Grace kept her shoulders squared, like she was bracing without knowing why. They offered to help carry something she didn't need help with. She declined. They accepted the decline too easily. That's when I knew that he was up to something nefarious. They talked longer than necessary, about nothing important, about weather and traffic and how quiet the house was during the day. It was boring and pointless. Too much listening, too many pauses. Grace excused herself, apologized. Of course she did. She walked away slowly, then faster. When we reached the door, she stopped, hand on the knob, eyes unfocused. Her heart was loud. I could hear it. She whispered my name. That was the first time she sounded afraid without trying to hide it. She could feel the stare of the strange man in the driveway. He just stood still, confused, eyes fixed on Grace, never returning to his conversation with Tyler. Because Grace had smiled at them, because Grace had thanked them, because Grace had been kind, almost as if they were expecting Grace to be rude. It was weird. Later that night, Grace was still afraid. I'm not sure of what, but Grace packed a small bag. Not to leave, just in case. She tells herself it's practical. She kneels and presses her forehead to mine. "Be good," she says. I hate that phrase. People only say it when they don't know how long they'll be gone. She turns off the light, lies awake, stares at the ceiling like she's waiting for permission to sleep. Down the hall, a door closes quietly. I curl against her side and listen to the house shift around us. By morning, Grace will still be here, but the plan to remove her will already exist, and that's worse. In the middle of the night, I heard Ashley say that Grace can't be trusted to keep her mouth closed and that she would never accept a payout. I heard Tyler say that Grace is a liability that must be handled at once. Can you believe that? My Grace? That's ludicrous. How could she be a liability, and what are they trying to hide? The next morning, Grace woke before the alarm, not because she wanted to, because the house was already moving. Footsteps, voices, doors opening where doors usually stayed closed. She sat up slowly, listened. That's what she did when she sensed trouble, tried to understand it before it noticed her. She dressed carefully, calm movements, normal ones. She didn't want to give anyone a reason to say she wasn't doing her job. I followed her into the hallway. 2 people were waiting. Not family, not friends. It was 2 rather large men in suits and a man dressed in scrubs like a nurse. Upon seeing Grace, they smiled a smile that never reached their eyes. Grace stopped. I felt her heart speed up through the floor. They spoke gently, soft voices, reassuring words. They said they were there because people were worried about her. They said she'd been under stress. They said she needed to talk to someone, somewhere quiet. I knew immediately that this was a setup because she had me to talk to. Grace blinked. She said there must be a mistake. She said she was fine. She said she had responsibilities. She said she hadn't asked for this. They nodded. People always nod when they're not listening because they have their mind already made up. One of them stepped closer, not threatening, just enough to block the hallway. That's when Grace understood this wasn't a conversation. I jumped in front of Grace, made myself bigger, and I hissed at them. I don't do that often, only when something is very wrong. One of them noticed me then, made a face, took a step back. Grace reached for me instinctively. "No!" someone said quickly. The man in scrubs told her pets weren't allowed where she was going. He told her I'd be safer here. Grace shook her head. She said she wasn't leaving without me. The house went quiet. That's when someone else spoke. Tyler emerged from the room and told her that it was for her own good and that his father called him over because he was concerned about her and feared that she might be on the verge of a mental break. Then he said, "Please, Grace, this is hard for all of us. Please don't make this harder." Grace, ignoring the obvious deception, tried to step past them. She didn't raise her voice, didn't panic. She just tried to stay in her own life. Hands reached out, not rough, not kind either, just firm. That's when Grace stopped arguing. She looked at me. I ran toward her. Someone grabbed me. Grace cried out. That was the loudest sound she ever made in that house. The door opened. The air outside rushed in like it knew something bad had happened. Grace screamed, "Don't hurt him!
Saint, I love you. Mummy will be okay. This isn't right.
Grace was guided forward whether she wanted to go or not. She turned once, just once. That look stayed with me. My Gracie is gone, taken against her will, and I'm not sure where. The door closed. The house exhaled. Someone said it was necessary. Someone said it would blow over. Someone said Grace would understand later. No one said her name again that morning. This is tough for me to talk about. I'm still rather traumatized. Please tune in next Monday to find out what happened to Grace and what they were really hiding. I must admit, it blew my mind when I got all the details. Let me know what you think they are hiding down in the comments section. Before you go, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified anytime there is a new upload. See you next week. Until then, take care of each other.